You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey there YouTube, the Dapper Dinosaur here. Last time we covered 11 so-called quick facts from ICR, and today we're going to do 10 more. As a reminder, the whole video used music extensively and I had to do some pretty heavy editing to get rid of most of it to avoid copyright problems. As a result, the audio is not very good. I hope that's okay. We're starting off with Beetle Battle as our first topic of the day, and 53rd overall.
We've all seen pictures of animals doing battle or predators stalking their unsuspecting prey. Many of these creatures use brute strength, deadly venom, unstoppable speed, or ferocious teeth and claws to survive these deadly encounters. But the bombardier beetle is equipped with what scientists have described as a chemical cannon.
Oh goodness, I'm surprised we didn't get into this ICR classic earlier. Let's see if they repeat Dwayne Gish's inane take that hydrogen peroxide and hydroquinone react explosively without an inhibitor, which is the exact opposite of how it actually works.
When predators, like lizards for instance, attempt to strike the bombardier beetle with a snap of their tongues, superheated chemicals explode from special glands to drive predators away. Researchers have discovered that within the bombardier beetle is an armory of toxic chemicals and biological catalysts. Stored in separate reservoirs, these chemicals, when combined with the right catalysts, create a noxious gas as hot as boiling water.
They're actually getting it right. Although they're being super vague, the chemicals in question are hydrogen peroxide and hydroquinone, both of which are already chemicals insects make. Hydroquinone is particularly important for shedding the exoskeleton in juvenile insects. Members of the Carabidae family, the family that includes the bombardier beetles, because yes, there are also flange bombardier beetles which have independently evolved the mechanism for shooting this stuff, tend to carry extra hydroquinone in grooves on their exoskeleton or in internal pouches that make them smell and taste bad to predators. Funny how they're leaving out all the still living intermediate forms that, according to the standard kind is a family idea, are all in the same kind. In fact, being in the same kind, it looks like even according to creationist ideas, this mechanism for shooting hot liquid must have evolved not just once, but twice in the family Carabidae.
Pulses through a complex valve and tube system at a rate of 500 times per second with an audible popping sound. When faced with danger, the beetle's internal systems activate the toxic chemical mix and send the explosive gases through its cannon equipped with muscles and nerves that help control and aim the blast.
Usually there's at least some argument that the beetle would blow itself up in intermediary stages of evolution, but I guess when you don't get the whole reaction backwards, this is less of a compelling argument.
The bombardier beetle is no accident of nature. It is an example of complex design and irreducible complexity.
Ah, there it is, irreducible complexity. So this argument, at least in the form it usually takes now, was proposed by Michael Behe in the 1996 book Darwin's Black Box. And of course, we're off to a good start with Behe publishing a book rather than submitting his ideas to peer review. So Behe's definition of this concept is as follows. By irreducibly complex, I mean a single system which is necessarily composed of several well-matched interacting parts that contribute to the basic function wherein the removal of any one of the parts causes the system to effectively cease functioning. An irreducibly complex system cannot be produced directly, that is, by continuous improving the initial function, which continues to work the same mechanisms by slight successive modifications of a precursor system, because any precursor to an irreducibly complex system that is missing a part is by definition non-functional. Now, there's only one way to take this argument about irreducible complexity that results in a potential problem for evolutionary biology, which is to make the claim that no irreducibly complex system can evolve. Therefore, observing one disconfirms evolution insofar as it cannot explain the evolution of the system in question. Of course, the corollary is that if biologists can demonstrate the evolution of an irreducibly complex system, then the irreducible complexity argument is falsified. There are other interpretations, but they either do not address evolutionary biology, or they are unfalsifiable, so I won't bother with them. Here's the thing though, the evolution of irreducibly complex systems has been seen. Two famous examples include the tetherin antagonism in some HIV viruses by their VPU protein, and of course the ability to metabolize citrate in the presence of oxygen by some strains in the Lenski long-term E. coli experiment. In the first case, multiple parts of the VPU protein and HIV work together to antagonize human tetherin, an immune system protein, thus enabling the virus to infect otherwise immune human hosts. Remove any of the parts of the protein that does this, and the virus loses the capacity. So it's irreducibly complex. Yet we know this was not going on much before a century ago, when HIV evolved from the simian immunovirus. In the case of E. coli, their ability to metabolize citrate required numerous separate mutations, all of which had to be in place in order for the ability to work. Removing any of the mutations breaks this ability. But this ability was watched evolving in real time. So it turns out that even if the bombarding part of the bombardier beetle is irreducibly complex, it doesn't help.
Which means that the beetle must have all of these components in place in order to activate its defenses and survive.
That's just factually untrue. Because as we've already gone over, just having significant quantities of either hydrogen peroxide or hydroquinone will make the beetles taste bad and deter predation. Just being able to expel a mixture of them without it burning will further dissuade predation. So reduced versions of this not only work, but even still exist. In fact, most carabid beetles just rely on keeping a bunch of these chemicals around so they taste bad. But Ookpister beetles are actually transitional, being able to squirt foul-smelling but not hot or boiling liquid in a way like that of the bombardier beetle. They lack the enzyme that makes hydrogen peroxide and hydroquinone react violently. It's always fun when young Earth creationists say that something can't evolve, and all the steps of its evolution are still around in living creatures.
And like the rest of creation, only the creator could have engineered so perfect a design from the beginning.
Well, except that it verifiably didn't need a designer. Whoops. The next topic is our second of the day, and it's the 54th overall, and it's looking young.
No one's ever discovered the fountain of youth, but a lot of us still try to keep up a youthful appearance. Makeup, Botox, plastic surgery, it all helps for a short time, but scientists tell us that we will, unfortunately, still grow old.
I'm kind of hoping they try to say that you can avoid it by praying hard enough, but I feel like that's not the point they're going to make.
Scientists also tell us about the age of this planet we call home, but not everyone's in agreement. Some believe Earth is billions of years old and formed quite accidentally and spontaneously from the Big Bang.
I love how to creationists, every single scientist who doesn't have an anti-scientific preconceived idea that they must stick to dogmatically is just some. There is no one actually doing science providing any reason to think that the Earth is only a few thousand years old. Everyone purporting to do so is a pseudoscientist, not because of their results, but because of their method, which is to only allow evidence that supports the already known conclusion that they must reach. Creationism is the actual opposite of science. It is just well-funded flat Earth.
Other scientists look at the evidence in the geology of the Earth and can clearly see the youth of the planet.
No, pseudo-geologists can come in with the conclusion that the Earth is young because they interpreted a book that talks about windows in the dome over the flat Earth to have said so. And then they force any data they can't ignore to fit into that, despite the fact that it contradicts virtually everything we know about the physical world.
Rocks and strata and fossils that formed quickly by powerful floods and mud flows.
Sure, plenty of rocks were formed that way, but plenty that they need to be formed that way physically cannot be, like low-energy coastal deposits with tidal crossbedding, fine-grained non-flocculated shale, limestone, evaporite, subaerial tuff, and aeolian sandstone, to name just a few. All these rocks and more cannot be formed in a flood, and they are all over the parts of the geological record that ICR says constitute the rocks laid down by the flood.
The evidence of carbon-14 in diamonds, for instance, shows that Earth cannot be millions or billions of years old.
Already covered earlier in the series.
The discovery of soft tissue in dinosaur fossils leaves paleontologists scratching their heads, because squishy dino tissue can't last millions of years.
And it didn't, but again, I've already covered this earlier.
And the beauty of spiral galaxies and blue stars that astronomers observe through telescopes can only be seen if those formations are young.
True, and formations with blue stars are young. Young things can exist within an older universe. Anyone who's ever seen a baby should be able to work this out.
From a scientific point of view, Earth looks young because, well, it is young.
But it doesn't look young. And it's not just me saying this. Take a look at what Dr. Ken Coulson had to say about it.
Will science, in and of itself, lead a person to believe that the Earth is less than about 10,000 years old? Would purely objective observations lead that person to believe in a billions of years old Earth and universe? By no means, since so many features look so young. Although I appreciate the intent of these authors, and although I agree with their young age creationist convictions, I would have to disagree about this statement based on a straightforward reading of Genesis 1. You see, the Bible testifies to the supernatural creation of a mature universe out of nothing in just 6 days. The Bible bears testimony to the miracle of creation. that God supernaturally created and formed a universe in just 6 days. And this means that without recourse to divine revelation, the unbelieving human will only interpret this maturity in terms of process and vast amounts of time. What is required, as the writer of the Hebrews tells us, is faith in God's revealed word.
And is Dr. Coulson some evolutionist? Why, no, he's a young Earth creationist, and he fully acknowledges that the only reason anyone could think the Earth is young is if he decides that the Bible, as he interprets it at least, is true.
And that evidence supports the historical account in Genesis that in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Only if you start with assuming your conclusion is true, which, is fallacious. Okay, our next topic of the day is sharp teeth.
Are you a carnivore?
Yeah, I'm a ceratosaurus. Of course I'm a carnivore.
Every time you bite into a juicy steak, pork chop, or chicken wing, you're acting like one. Your doctor might tell you to cut back on your carnivorous activity and eat more fruits and vegetables.
I will say lots of humans eat too much meat, especially in the United States. Humans really shouldn't be eating meat in every meal, but that's pretty typical in parts of the developed world.
But that's because medical research indicates that we live longer and healthier if we eat less meat. And that's pretty good advice, considering that was God's design at creation. To both man and animals, God said that fruits and vegetables shall be for food. So, how did meat get on the menu?
Well, for humans, both chimpanzees and early hominins are known to have eaten meat, so humans ate meat from the beginning of anything that could be reasonably termed a human. As for other animals, we know that many animals are fundamentally unsuited to eating plants. Look at felines. They have very short guts, no ability to grind plant matter, and absolutely could not live on plant matter in the wild. Even instances where animals like lions were fed on cooked soybeans, such as in the English zoos during World War II, don't help. This is because lions are spectacularly bad at cooking beans.
And why would God create large, sharp teeth if they weren't supposed to eat meat?
That's the wrong question. Many herbivorous animals have sharp teeth. The key is, why would God create animals to eat plants with no evident ability to process or digest significant amounts of plant matter? How does a lion or a crocodile grind up leaves? Where would they do the long digestion process needed to efficiently get nutrients out of plants? You could shovel raw plant matter into the mouth of either of these animals all day long, and all that will happen is that they'll poop out essentially intact plant matter while they slowly starve to death.
It actually wasn't until after the flood of Noah that God gave us permission to eat meat.
Sure, in the narrative of the Bible, which demonstrably is not a literal historical fact.
And those sharp teeth? The fact is that these animals eat other food as well, and use those teeth to break through the tough rinds of fruit or the hard shells of nuts.
Okay, so we're shown the skull of a Nile crocodile, Crocodilus niloticus. It was a little hard to figure that out, as it's an eye stock image that does not list the species anywhere, so I had to go looking at the dentation of various crocodile species in other pictures to make sure. It does also look a bit like Crocodilus acutus, the American crocodile, but the relatively smooth increase in tooth size through the anterior-most 5 dentary teeth make me pretty confident in my identification. Near as I can tell, the only plant matter ever found in the digestive tract of a Nile crocodile were the remains of cypress, a common reed in the Nile region. Some other crocodilians have occasionally been found with fruit in their stomachs, but it makes up a tiny fraction of their diet, and importantly, fruit are the easiest parts of plants to digest. There is a reason no one cares to provide captive crocodilians with fruit. While, like most animals, they can and do eat a bit of it, it's a minor part of their diet, and they cannot and do not subsist on it. Crocodilians are obligate carnivores. They must eat meat. But that is not to say that they cannot eat some plant matter. The reverse is also the case. Most obligate herbivores will eat a bit of meat here and there. But what creationists propose is that all animals can survive indefinitely on plant matter, and that simply is not true, including not for the animals shown on screen.
For instance, while we think of bears as predators when we camp, they're actually omnivores and can be quite content on a vegetarian diet.
Yep, that's true of bears. But let's look at the teeth that they use to process those plants. Oh look, the molars are flat grinding teeth. Weird, let's check how the molars of lions look. Oh, sharp shearing teeth. And this lines up with their relative diets. Lions are almost exclusively carnivores and bears are omnivores. Funny how that works, isn't it?
And don't forget that our cats and dogs have sharp teeth, just like lions and wolves. But the processed food we give them today is often made from corn, soybeans, and rice.
Yeah, the processed food humans make. Let's see, can these animals cook rice, maize, or soybeans to make them easier to digest? Oh, right. No, they can't. So were all carnivorous animals pets of humans at one point, just so they wouldn't need to eat meat?
So the next time you sit down for a steak dinner, don't forget to pile on the veggies for your health and to honor our creator.
Well, I'm certainly not going to say you shouldn't eat vegetables. Our next topic is outrun disasters.
Do you have what it takes to outrun a natural disaster?
I guess it depends on what the disaster is, how much warning I get, and what the terrain is like. For most wildfires, yeah, I probably could. Tsunamis, no, probably not. If I got super lucky and picked the right angle, then maybe I could avoid more than outrun a tornado. But I don't know if that counts. I could probably outrun slower floods, but not a flash flood or a dam breach or something like that.
Maybe if you set a world record of 27.79 miles per hour, that's fast enough to escape a hurricane.
I definitely couldn't run that fast. Plus, no one can sustain that long enough to outrun a hurricane, unless they have a lot of notice.
Hurricanes travel around 15 to 20 miles per hour. Molten lava can move up to 6 miles per hour, but that's slow compared to a volcano's pyroclastic flow. These superheated gas and rock mixtures can reach speeds well over 400 miles per hour.
Does this count as a big number, therefore God? I'm not sure. Maybe. It's your bingo card. You do what you want.
The people of Pompeii were literally buried alive in their tracks when Mount Vesuvius exploded in 79 AD.
A year given to us by Pliny the Younger, who survived the blast, but was later confirmed via radiometric dating, indicating that when a known historical date is tested radiometrically, provided the sample is actually a valid one for radiometric dating, it does indeed provide the right answer. Fun how science actually works despite what pseudoscientific frauds like John Sanford or Andrew Snelling might want you to believe.
When volcanoes, rain, mudflows, and tsunamis drastically change the entire surface of the earth so quickly, that's why God told Noah to build the ark to save his family and the animals.
So destructive, it could never preserve things like dinosaur tracks, or in situ swamps, or preserve multiple soil horizons in places like the Petrified Forest in Arizona. Oh, whoops. Were they trying to use this as an argument that the flood actually did happen? Oh, darn. And I just pointed out why that actually makes it definitely something that didn't happen. Oh well.
But that can't beat the speed of a tsunami, which can travel as fast as 600 miles per hour, about as quick as a commercial jet can fly. With all that we know about natural disasters, imagine how destructive the flood of Noah's day was.
Too bad that even under the least insane flood model, the flood would produce energy levels that would turn the Earth into a ball of plasma, which a wooden boat is just not going to survive. In fact, it's not even clear that the Earth wouldn't just blow up, as some flood models seem to produce more energy than the gravitational binding energy of the Earth, meaning the flood could have just pulled a Death Star on Earth. Well, our next topic is dumb luck.
Feeling lucky? Some people believe that a 4-leaf clover will bring them good luck, but finding one is pretty rare, about 1 in 10,000. Don't like those odds? Well, don't try poker. The odds of getting an ace-high royal flush are about 649,739 to 1.
Okay, this is definitely headed towards big number, therefore God.
Not a good gamble. And don't even think about playing the lottery. The odds of winning that are about 14 million to 1. What a waste. How about these odds? Scientists tell us that the building blocks of life are amazingly complex.
I mean, to some extent, but they're also known to form in non-biological ways, including ways that are relevant to prebiotic processes that may have led to life. Now, there is still a lot of unanswered questions in origin of life research, but chemistry is not generally stochastic, and so there are plausible mechanisms which reliably result in biologically important chemistry.
Basic life needs a minimum of 200 proteins, each of which can have anywhere from 20 to many thousands of amino acids that must be present and in the correct order.
I really need some kind of citation for the idea that basic life needs at minimum 20 proteins, and for how long they can be. It's not even clear where we could draw the line between non-living replicating chemistry and life, never mind determining how many proteins a minimal living organism needs. This sounds like numbers that were pulled straight out of ICR's collective colon, aka Randy Galuzzo.
That's about 1 in a trillion chance for basic life to exist.
No it's not. First, we don't know how many trials there could have been, so even if we could get the likelihood of life forming in a given trial, that wouldn't tell us the likelihood of life existing, because we don't know how many tries we get. Further, we don't have any assessment of how much of amino acid sequence space, which is where proteins live, could be functional for a minimal living organism with no competition. It could very well be very high, and further proteins don't just slap together randomly, they are under selection pressure, which removes their formation from purely stochastic concerns. So, in short, there are so many unknowns in this estimate that we absolutely cannot, with any rigor, place a prior likelihood on life forming. What we know is that Earth has life, and it used to not. So the chances of life forming on Earth is 100%, because that's what happened. Now, the question is how? Origin of life researchers are working on it, although they have a long way to go. Pseudoscientists, though, are just playing games with numbers until they get one small or big enough, depending on how you look at it, to say, now this number is too extreme without God, without any actual evidence that that number is significant, or any even hinted estimate as to how many times life has a chance to form.
You'd have a better chance of being struck by lightning or attacked by a shark.
Maybe, but those are both things for which we can gather actual statistical evidence and come up with prior chances for. We can even look into risk factors that would make it more or less likely. For example, the chances of any given human being being bitten by a shark are extremely low. But if you say just check the chances of any human currently swimming in Shark Bay, Australia, those chances will be significantly higher. Similarly, at any given time, the chances of any given human being struck by lightning are also very low. But if you restrict yourself to only humans standing on top of mountains in thunderstorms, suddenly that number goes up considerably. But either way, we can't gather such statistical information about the origin of life because we only have one example of it, and it's not clear exactly how it formed in the first place. And sure, creationists can stick their god of the gaps into abiogenesis if they like, but that's what they're doing, and if science ever solves that mystery, it will be one less place for that gappy god to hide. Also, I feel like someone is about to talk about a plane assembling from a storm ripping through a junkyard.
And yet we see the wonder of life all around us because our Creator designed every detail of every living thing.
Even creationists don't actually believe that, because they need mega evolution after the flood to provide for modern diversity, despite Noah only apparently taking 2 animals for each taxonomic family. So the details that differentiate the fennec fox from the maned wolf or the African painted dog from the Central Asian dhole were of necessity produced by evolution, not simply placed there specifically by God.
All with great purpose. Nothing was left to chance. So maybe you'd better forget about gambling on the lottery or cards or even hunting for that elusive 4-leaf clover. The odds are not in your favor. Better to bank on the marvelous life God gave you, which He called very good.
I mean, yeah, you probably shouldn't waste your time playing the lottery unless you understand it's just a money hole, and you're only doing it for fun, in which case, hey, it's your money. It certainly shouldn't be part of your financial planning, though, except as an expense. As for clovers, I don't know. Go have fun doing what you do. Our next topic is useless body parts.
Ever had your tonsils out, or maybe your appendix?
I have not.
You probably were told that these organs are vestigial or unnecessary organs in the body.
Jesus, mother Christ, you assholes just won't stop with this. Okay, fine, here's Dapper from earlier in this series to talk about this. No, vestigial features are not necessarily useless. They are just no longer used for the primary purpose that they are used for in related animals. For example, the wings of ostriches do not allow them to fly, so they are vestigial, even though they do let them keep their balance while running, and allow them to perform mating displays. They remain vestigial despite having important functions. Unless they come up with something other than just, wow, commonly identified vestigial structures have function, therefore for no reason they are not vestigial anymore, we're skipping until the next section.
Leftovers from evolution. But scientists have discovered that these unnecessary organs are actually very useful.
Okay, they do indeed continue with that for a while, so we're skipping all of their examples of vestigial organs, but then they switch topic. Kind of.
The same goes for so-called junk DNA. Researchers once thought that some of our molecular makeup was just scrap that didn't have any purpose.
Some researchers once thought is a really weird way of saying the overwhelming consensus among all experts in relevant fields is that there is no serious debate over whether much of the human genome is junk. Even the smallest estimates from groups like ENCODE, who are, if anything, too willing to assign function, come to no more than 20% of the genome being functional. And that's not to say that they just don't know what the other 80% of the genome is doing. They do know what much of it's doing, and what it's doing is nothing that helps the organism survive. Therefore, it's non-functional by any useful definition of function.
But recent studies have found particular components in junk DNA that are vital to life.
To be junk DNA is to not be sequence constrained, and to therefore have no selection pressure acting on the DNA in question. To be vital to life is to be sequence constrained, because some mutations would harm the associated function and thereby must be weeded out by selection. If something was thought to be junk, all you need to do is show that it's sequence constrained, and then you can know that it's not junk. But the majority of the human genome is known to not be sequence constrained, and to instead accumulate mutations through neutral evolution. meaning that for sure it is non-functional. If you found a vital function in non-sequence constrained regions, it would mean that some vital function could be lost without affecting the organism. This is a contradiction. So no vital functions have been found in junk DNA. That makes as much sense as saying that in fact some corners have been found in a circle. Our next topic is evolution in action. I'm guessing that they'll misdefine evolution.
It's easy to see that puppies grow to become dogs and that kittens become cats. But what about animals that look very different when they're babies, like tadpoles?
I'm immediately suspicious. This is supposed to be about evolution in action, but instead we're getting ontogeny, which is not evolution at all, and comparing them as if they were the same would be a sign of immense ignorance or dishonesty.
When frog eggs hatch, the tiny tadpoles live in water and swim around, a lot like small fish. And as they get older, they grow legs, lungs, and they lose their tails. Eventually, they can leave the water and hop around on land, just like grown-up frogs. Some say that tadpoles becoming frogs shows evolution in action.
Those people are dumb. What it shows is ontogeny in action. The interesting thing is how, given that according to evolutionary biology, list amphibians are very basal in their reproduction, that their ontogeny greatly resembles that of various fish, including having fry-like larvae that only develop limbs or fins later. But that similarity doesn't mean that ontogeny is evolution.
The same has been said of the metamorphosis of caterpillars into butterflies.
That's also very dumb. In fact, more dumb. Full metamorphosis in insects is a highly derived feature that in no way is ancestral to the group as a whole, or more importantly, to even wider groups like Hexapoda, Crustacea, or Arthropoda.
But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. After all, a puppy never grows into an ostrich, and a kitten never becomes an armadillo.
Yeah, that's correct.
In the same way, a tadpole never grows up to be anything except a frog. That's because the Bible says God specifically and purposefully made every creature, from the birds in the air to the fish in the sea, and He gave them the ability to reproduce after their kind.
Once again, if you want to make kind a useful term in science, you need a way to define kind such that when you ask if any given organisms are in the same kind, you can get a high confidence no answer. I'm unaware of any such definition, and it's not like I'm not looking.
So that they could multiply and fill the earth. If monkeys had fish for babies, they wouldn't be around very long.
Yep, and evolutionary biology also agrees here.
So while a baby penguin is puffy and cute, it loses its fuzz when it grows up and instead gets a nice, streamlined body that's perfect for swimming. It's the same when tadpoles lose their tails or when caterpillars are given beautiful wings. All of it showcases the wonderful design and artistry of our Creator.
I have no idea what the argument is supposed to be. Natural selection can act at any stage of ontogeny, so ontogeny can evolve. There wasn't even an attempt to show why that doesn't work. I think this is just a look at the trees one, but I'm not really sure. Let me know in the comments what you think the argument is here. Our next topic is Isaac Newton.
Some of us think of Isaac Newton as the guy who discovered how gravity works. You know, like the apple falling from the tree.
Which isn't a real thing that happened.
But Newton did much more than just that. He was a brilliant mathematician and physicist, and many today recognize him as one of the greatest scientists of all time.
Yep, Newton was pretty darn smart, but I feel like this is all about to go into Newton being a Christian, and how that's why he was able to be so smart.
But the fact is that young Newton was not always a good student, and it took a school bully, who bested Newton in a fight, to motivate him to excel in his studies, eventually outranking everyone in his class. After that, school was never a problem for Newton.
I feel like we need a point, and soon.
In fact, he later studied at the University of Cambridge, graduating in 1665. While working on his master's degree, he earned membership in the Royal Society in 1671 and later became the group's president in 1701.
Okay, I don't care. This needs to say something relevant soon or I'm just skipping.
Newton was a serious student of the Bible, and he acknowledged God in many of his writings, even his scientific ones.
But he also wasn't a Christian according to any definition ICR would recognize. He thought that worshipping Christ was idolatry and seems to have not accepted the Trinity. He'd be in the same boat as, say, the Jehovah's Witnesses as far as ICR is concerned. Plus, did he use any passages in the Bible to justify his mathematical or scientific conclusions? Why, in fact, he did not. His inspiration from the Bible is incidental, not vital to his scientific achievements.
He wrote that gravity explains the motions of the planets, but it cannot explain who set the planets in motion.
That Isaac Newton may have used the God of the gaps doesn't mean that God actually is what went into that gap, and we now have closed that gap anyway with our understanding of solar system formation and stellar formation. Now, it's not like every question about the origin of the solar system has been answered, but it's still far from appropriate to just hang a sign on the solar system saying, God did it. as if we don't know anything about the natural processes involved. Well, our next topic is imitating humans.
We use computers so much that it's easy to forget that they've only been around for about 70 years. Konrad Zuse invented the world's first working computer, the Z3, in 1941. The German Aircraft Research Institute used it to test wing aerodynamics, but it was destroyed when Allies bombed Berlin in 1943.
Along with Spinosaurus. Sad face. But then I guess that's what you get for doing a genocide, Germany. Or like 5 genocides? I don't know, does each demographic targeted constitute a separate genocide? Like, is it one collective one, or is it one for the Jews, one for the Romani, one for the Bible students, one for the LGBTQ people, one for the disabled, etc.? I guess it doesn't really matter in the end. It's still 11 million or so people murdered at the hands of the German state, and they weren't intending to end just at that number.
Since then, computers have changed our lives completely. For instance, a basic cell phone today has more processing power and costs much less than the Apollo guidance computer.
Okay, I think that this is about to be just humans make computers and they're cool, but human brains are even cooler, so God must have made them. That is, again, just look at the trees if that's the case. And yes, that's exactly what the rest of it is. Just cool thing, therefore God did it. Okay, that's not an argument, which means we're moving on to our penultimate topic, and that is measuring billions.
Just how much is 1 billion?
About 1/7 of the number of humans at the time of this writing.
If you type the letter A 1,000 times on a sheet of paper, you would need 1 million pages to make a billion.
Well, we can tell that Jeffrey Tompkins didn't write this because they got the math right, and remember, Tompkins is a PhD geneticist who can't add 2 numbers in triple digits and who doesn't know to weight on average like a 6th grader knows to do.
The largest passenger airplane, the Airbus A380, has a maximum seating capacity of 853. It would take almost 1.2 million of the super jumbo jets to carry 1 billion people.
In fact, it would make a minimum of 1,172,333 of them. Again indicating that Jeffrey Tompkins wasn't involved in this because when you round that number to the nearest 100,000, you do indeed get 1.2 million. I really would like to know why we're hearing this, though. It seems like they're just going to be big number, therefore God. They just keep going with more explanations of dividing 1 billion by other quantities.
1 billion seems like a big number, and many believe that the planet Earth is not just 1, but over 4 billion years old. But if the Earth is billions of years old, then how could scientists have detected carbon-14 in diamonds deep in the Earth, an element that only lasts thousands of years?
Well, there isn't any actually good evidence that they have. The supposed detection of carbon-14 in diamonds has always returned ages that are essentially the oldest carbon dating can give. This is like complaining that your kitchen scale says that your 2-kilogram bag of rice is only 50 grams, when that's how high the kitchen scale goes. But why was anything detected at all? Well, because you never get a 0 reading in a carbon-14 test. Even in a never-used test chamber, the vacuum pumps that evacuate the chamber aren't perfect, and some atmospheric carbon-14 will remain, meaning that you'll always get some positive reading. What was detected in diamonds was indistinguishable from background.
And if the Earth is billions of years old, then the Earth's magnetic field should have long ago depleted its energy.
No, its energy comes from the movement of molten materials in the planet, and until they cool off, the Earth won't be acting like a permanent magnet that will simply decay away. Instead, its field will fluctuate, flip, and do all sorts of other active, chaotic stuff. Further, the Earth is kept hot by radioactive decay, so that magnetic field isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
But we still live on a very lively planet. If you think about it, a 1 billion-year-old planet doesn't match the scientific data.
It matches literally all of it, and it should be revealing that the only people who disagree do so because of a prior faith commitment, and not because they were convinced by the data without such a faith commitment. Even if young Earth creationism were true, it still wouldn't be the case that the data don't support an old Earth. They absolutely do.
But more than that, 1 billion cannot even come close to describing how big our Creator is.
I don't even know what that means, but our final topic is humans are unique.
Thanksgiving is a big celebration here in America.
We already did a Thanksgiving one, man.
And there's a lot for us to be thankful for, like just being human. Did you know that humans are the only creatures on Earth that celebrate holidays and birthdays?
I did know that. Did you know that the platypus is the only animal to have heel spur venom? I guess it's a miracle.
And only humans build monuments to remember important people or events, like the Iwo Jima Memorial in Washington, D.C., which was completed in 1954.
I knew that about humans, too. But did you know that the blue whale is the only animal to exceed 330,000 pounds in weight?
Speaking of building things, humans will alter the landscape to suit their needs.
So do beavers, ants, termites, cactus wrens, basically anything that burrows or builds a nest does this to some extent. But also African elephants knock down trees, keeping the forest from spreading, which would limit their habitat.
From building houses and skyscrapers to bridges and dams, we also invent things to make our lives easier, like power tools, cell phones, computers, and construction equipment.
Chimpanzees have started inventing things too. They're in the Stone Age. Humans do it more and faster, but making inventions isn't unique to humans.
We compose music, write books, create paintings, and express ourselves through many art forms. And we establish commercial, governmental, and educational systems, all of which no other creature has.
Wow, did you know that the Sydney funnel web spider has venom that is uniquely dangerous to primates?
While humans do share some physical and behavioral traits with certain animals, we don't have much else in common.
That doesn't mean anything without some way of quantifying these similarities.
Dogs have a better sense of smell, and many birds see farther and clearer than we can.
Which kind of undermines the humans are the special boys of biology just a bit.
But humans don't need to smell or see like they do. In fact, we domesticate many animals because of their natural abilities. Without a doubt, humans are clearly different and superior to animals in many ways.
And the same or inferior in many other ways. If the argument is just humans aren't not humans, then yeah, everyone has noticed. This is really not the big send-off for the series I was hoping for, but I guess being let down by the Institute for Creation Research is pretty much on brand for them. After this, they just go into the Imago Dei, and I've said it many times, but thinking that the Imago Dei is about the physical anatomy of humans is possibly the dumbest way to think about it. But hey, I'm not your priest. Anyway, that's it. That's all they have for us. After all this, I can't help but feel disappointed, which is a theme with ICR. Well, if you enjoyed the video, hit like and tell me in the comments. If you didn't, feel free to hit dislike and tell me what the problem was in the comments. Either way, remember to hit subscribe and hit that bell icon so you're always notified when I have more content. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Benthoven, Tapioca Weasel, Denny5252, Elleron Teller, Phil Rivara, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostig Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babby, Monkey They Them, San, Sphincter of Doom, and the Venerable Bede. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.